Our whole lives are based on relationships. I remember an elderly priest told me years ago, everything is about relationships. You think about it, when we're born, right, we have that relationship with our parents, our siblings, grandparents, cousins. As we grow a little bit older, we start to have relationships with our classmates, with our teachers, with our coaches. And all of these relationships, I hope that for the majority of us, the majority of the time, they've been good, nurturing, healthy relationships. But we know that not always is that the case. There are some relationships that are stronger, some that are weaker, some that are healthier, some that are less healthy, right? And it's all about relationships. But there's one relationship that is of paramount importance. It's the most important relationship that any human being will have. And that's the relationship that we have with God. Most important of all our relationships. And I wanted to share with you this image that I found the other day. And I like to call it Jesus preparing his homily on the vine and the branches. Jesus is there, kind of playing around with the vine a little bit, gathering the grapes. And he wanted to use an image that people of his time and place would relate to, would understand, right? Maybe for us today, it's not the image we're most familiar with. But the people of his time, it most certainly was. And he was looking for a way to explain how intensely, how intimately, how deeply he wants us to be grafted onto him. And so I like to think of the Catholic Church today of being like this large vineyard of the Lord that's spread all throughout the world. And I love this particular image, the strong vine that's there, and it's actually kind of in the form of a cross. And you look at each one of these little clusters of grapes, and I like to think of them as little parishes throughout the world. Like there's St. E's right there, right? And there's another parish and another parish. And every week we gather as these small little Christian communities, we gather to be once again nurtured by the vine. And what we're doing right now, this 1 hour out of the 168 hours of every week, this hour is the most important hour of our week. Because it's that opportunity when we can hear Jesus' words directly, when we can sing these songs and say these prayers, and we can really be nurtured and go deeper and deeper into our relationship with him. But the second point of my homily is that Jesus just doesn't want us to feel nice and warm and cozy and gathered as a community, as wonderful as that feeling is, and as much as we live it here in such abundance. Because the main verb that he uses in today's gospel, which, by the way, if you play Wordle, it's today's Wordle word. So who is ever doing Wordle today must be very Catholic. I was very, very pleased with that early this morning. The verb that he uses is prune. Now, as Father Jay said last week, he's like, I've never met a shepherd, right? And I would say I've never met a vine dresser or a vineyard owner, right? I'm really kind of unfamiliar with the ways of tending to a vineyard. But I wanted to share with you an experience I had of pruning. And it's when I was old enough to work with my grandfather. So I'm guessing I was about 8 or 9 or whatever. And my grandfather was already retired, but he loved to do work in his yard. And my grandparents didn't live far away from us. And so I would go there and I would help to rake leaves with him. I would mow the lawn with him. We'd shovel the driveway. He taught me how to cut down trees. We did a lot of really neat things. And one day he said to me, he said, Stephen, I want to teach you how to prune a rhododendron. And rhododendron is like probably my favorite shrub. We had them all around our house. My grandparents had even more around their house. And so he took me to prune this thing. This is what my grandfather did to the rhododendron bush. I was like, Grandpa, you're going to kill the bush. Like, what are you thinking? What are you doing? It's like, Stephen, wait. Stephen, you're going to see why we prune it so drastically. And sure enough, waiting a few weeks, at the end, you had this massive rhododendron with all of these flowers, and I was absolutely, absolutely amazed. And I was thinking during this week, I don't know why I chose 3, but I thought of 3 moments in my life, the 3 darkest, most difficult moments in my life, when I felt that I was really pruned to the ground, when I really felt that I was being chopped down by life circumstances, whatever they were. I'm not going to get into them. We've all had our moments. And it's in moments like that where you really have to dig deep into your faith with our Lord. And as I look back on my life now, those 3 most painful moments are the ones that have bore the greatest fruit in my life. They seem like a curse at the time, but they've become such a blessing. The third point of my homily is that, as you know, about a year ago, we started with the bishops asked us to begin what we called a national Eucharistic revival. Right? They came to the realization that so many Catholics don't understand that the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. And so they invited all of us to do stuff in our parishes. And if you remember, the way we started it, we put on those little 3-minute videos of Bishop Barron, put them on before every Mass as he's explaining the different parts of the Mass. And then it's going to end now in mid-July. But what we're going to do starting in June, the deacons and the priests, we're going to do a series of homilies just on the Eucharist. Because it's in the Eucharist that we are most intimately united as branches on the vine. So it's going to be a beautiful series that I think you're all going to enjoy. But when we preach like that, though, and even right now, I feel I'm preaching to the choir, right? All of you come week after week because all of you know that the most important relationship in your life is your relationship to God. And all of you know that of all of the hours of the week, this is by far the most important hour. So there's a part of me that feels like telling you, like, all of you go home, send your next door neighbors, right? Send your siblings, send your spouses, send whoever is not coming to church, who's ever not grafted on the vine. Those are the people I am most concerned about. I mean, I love all of you, but I'm not concerned because I know you're united with Christ. Other people definitely have me concerned. But I want to end my homily with a secret. And it's actually one of my favorite prayers. I'm sure you've noticed that during Mass, there's little prayers that we as priests have to say in secret. In the Latin, it's in secreto, right? Or the really, really low voice. And it can almost sound like we're mumbling, right? And yes, sometimes I do mumble to myself, right? And those things happen. But I'm not mumbling when I'm at the altar. And it's the last 8 words of this prayer is what I want to share with you. So in that moment, that very moment when we as priests are just about to receive communion, so the high point of the Mass, of the most important hour of the week, we say this prayer, and I'll put it in the bulletin next week. But the last 8 words, I always say with such relish and pause, and I want to share them with you. And those last 8 words, just as we're about to receive Jesus, is, and never let me be parted from you. And never let me be parted from you. So today, as each one of us receive Jesus in Holy Communion, as we nurture ourselves as branches on the vine, as you go back to your place, as you either kneel down or sit down, or whatever you do for your silence after communion, I really invite you to close your eyes and knowing that Jesus is deeply there inside of you, say to him, and never let me be parted from you.